I can't do that, instead of, how can I do that? I can't possibly run this business. How can I learn how to run this business? I can't possibly be good at sales, or my dad was never good at sales, or my grandfather, or my mother, or you just fill in the blank. How could I become the first? It's a very different question, isn't it? One's a statement and one's a question. And if we got to be very careful, because the lack mindset constantly wants to see problems in every solution.
Hello, welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building six-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. And this week, Scott Lesak is back, and we're going to go deep on a subject about how to shift your mindset from surviving to thriving. So I have a question for the listeners. How many of you guys can honestly say that you feel like you're thriving in life? And how many of you guys are still just trying to survive? This week, we're going to unpack the tools and the strategies that we've learned along the way to help go from surviving to thriving. So if that sounds like you, keep on listening. Oh, Scott, I'm so excited to have you back on the show here. Last week, we really opened up the conversation around addiction, right? You shared your testimony, your story. And we had the opportunity to share some of our journeys. And we're just hope that someone out there that was listening, that maybe they decided to make that call or to go to a loved one and have the conversation they know they should have had a long time ago about the addictive nature of their being and or their past things they were hiding. But this week, we're going to shift gears and we're going to focus more on how do we go from shifting your mindset from surviving to thriving, right? That's our bigger goal. So Scott, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here as always.
Absolutely. So guys, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, go back and listen to it. No matter where you are in your journey, it's going to be powerful for you. So this week, we're going to be focusing on how to shift that mindset from surviving to thriving. And, I know when I first started out, I grew up on a farm and it was a garden center farm and we constantly had work. It was never an issue about that. We worked 7 days a week, my brother and I and my mother and father, and, we never got paid for it. That was never the deal. What my parents were trying to instill was a work ethic like no other, and they succeeded, right? They did a really good job with that. But what I didn't know how to manage was my value or how to thrive, like when it comes to financial thriving and all that. Not that that's only one of the different things to focus on, but I didn't learn much about that, right? We always had enough food. We always had plenty of work. But it didn't really become clear that this was a thing until I started running a business, until I started to ask people for money for what my service was valued at. And what I found is I struggle with that. I really struggle with that, Scott. It was like asking clients for $1,000 a day in the beginning. I felt like a complete imposter. I'm thinking like, dude, I'm a farmer, right? I'm out here doing stuff that I just read a book about yesterday or talked to somebody, they taught me how to do. And now I'm out here doing this and they're paying me this money. And I struggled for many years with that because we never had extra money, dude. It blew my mind that I could go out to clients' houses and they would be looking at a $10,000 project back in those days. And to be like, yeah, it sounds good. Where do I sign my check to? And I'm thinking, you're telling me you've got $10,000 sitting in an account somewhere? I'm like, holy shit! Like I'm going from paycheck to paycheck here, right? So it's like thinking, wait, what am I doing wrong? What are they doing right that they have all this money sitting on the side and I'm struggling to make ends meet? I'm like, wait a minute here, what's going on? So I was in a survival mindset where it was, hey, I just need enough to survive. That's it. That's how I was taught growing up. My family wasn't uber wealthy. We had plenty of work, like I said, and we always helped people and all that stuff, but we didn't have a whole lot of money. So it was like, how do I shift that? Because everybody that I aspired to be like, mentors in my life, I didn't have mentors back then, but people that I aspired toward, that were mentoring me without me knowing it, they had figured that out. So how do we go? I'd love to hear your story about how you go from, surviving to thriving, especially in business and then in life as well.
And I love this topic. I'm so excited to dive in on this. And it's a huge shift. I think our generation specifically, the kids born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, in that time frame, we were all raised on the ideology of we were born this way. We're naturally good at this.
Yeah.
You're awesome at this. You're so good. You're not good at this. You were born with that skill set. Try something else. And for me, I was really good at a lot of stuff, and other things that I was really interested in that I wasn't good at, I just stopped because I was good at the other things. And that was like, I'm naturally this way. I'm naturally doing this. I might as well work here. And the reality couldn't be further from the truth. When you understand modern day neurology and the way our brain works and the neural pathways can reconstruct and rebuild themselves. We have certain neural pathways right now that are firing. Picture it like an electricity. You have your positive terminal, your negative terminal, and a wire running between them. Cut that wire right in half and add a new one. You have a new wire. Maybe you took away a blue one and you put a green one in. Great, we're on that green one now. But the blue one's still there. So if you touch that blue one together, it's still going to fire back and forth. So we can break those habits. We can put that green wire in place and start developing a new skill set. The new one doesn't necessarily go away, and that's where things like addiction come into play, like we talked about last week. Not to go on another tangent about that, but it's a very good topic to bring into this. You can cut that blue wire, and let's call that blue wire addiction. The second you pick up a drink, the second you pick up your drug of choice and put it back in, that reconnects that blue wire, and it's like you never stopped. That's how that actually works. Even though the green one exists, but that green one's cut now. That principle, understanding that, has allowed me to adopt the abundant outlook in the world that I have. And I'm laughing over here at that $10,000 check thing because I felt the exact same way. I wonder how many sales I talked myself out of because I couldn't comprehend money early in my career. And I can think of examples that led to that. So how many am I not thinking about? But just understanding the abundance. And there's so much money out there that we'll never ever be able to comprehend that. There is so much knowledge out there. We'll never be able to have it all. There is so much water out there. We'll never be able to drink it all. There's so much air out there. We'll never be able to breathe it all. All this stuff, it's all intertwined. And that thought process has really allowed me to adopt a growth mindset and an abundant mindset. And rather than saying, oh, this doesn't work, it's like, how can we make this work? There's got to be a way. Humans can't fly. You jump off a roof, you can't fly. But how can we? There's a solution to that. Nobody's invented it yet, but there's a solution to that out there, guaranteed.
And it's how you reposition that question. You did it right here for us just a moment ago. I can't do that, instead of, how can I do that? I can't possibly run this business. How can I learn how to run this business? I can't possibly be good at sales, or my dad was never good at sales, or my grandfather, or my mother, or you just fill in the blank. How could I become the first? It's a very different question, isn't it? One's a statement and one's a question. And if we got to be very careful, because the lack mindset constantly wants to see problems in every solution. It always wants to find problems and show you an impossible thing that's unsolvable. It's a problem that's unsolvable. Where the abundance mindset says, okay, I might not know how yet. That little word in the end, yet, changes everything. Okay, I don't know how to break that addiction. I don't know how to start a company. I don't know how to scale a company. I don't know how to start a team yet. All right, let's figure out who we can get around, either buy a course or read a book, go to a seminar, whatever it means to you, whatever it is, to learn how to do that and then become that person. Because guys, it's not the goal that we're after in life. It's the person that we become in order to achieve that goal that we're truly after. So how do we develop that? How do we develop that person that can finally, instead of saying yet, can finally say, yeah, I get it now because I did the work? There's no fast track to these things. You got to put the work in. Did you find that to be true as well?
Absolutely. And that question, just asking that question, how can I, instead of I can't, understanding the psychology behind it, understanding what that does inside of our brains is really powerful. The second we say, I can't do something, we check that off. Our subconscious is like, yep, we can't do that. On to the next one. And it's gone. It's buried in the abyss. It's gone. Yep. The second we ask, how can I do that? We start trying to figure it out. That's the way our brains work. We can't choose to do this. That's just naturally the way our brains work. And that is one area, I know we're going on all this, that we're naturally born. You're naturally born that way. Your brain works that way. So take that thinking and understand the way that thinking works in everything. I'd rather stimulate my thought process. One of my biggest things when I was drinking was, I'm shutting off my brain. I don't want to be thinking anymore. Man, what a dumb idea.
Yeah.
How many ideas did I lose through that time frame to shut it down? I want to keep it open and on as much as possible. Yep. And if that means I'm not sleeping at night, I have a notepad in my hand. And that's where some of my best ideas come from. And it's just learning how to stimulate your brain. I mean, I think that's the answer to this entire topic. Learn how to stimulate your brain. And we'll go into a lot more detail than that. But that's the big thing. How can we stimulate our brain and get new ideas out?
But you know what, Scott, what I found in the beginning, specifically when I started to open up the questions, instead of being a victim, like, hey, this is always happening to me, instead of focusing on happening for me, right? Like you mentioned in the last episode, that whole shift, that small shift in mindset changes everything. I used to think, all right, well, why is this always as a victim? Why did this happen to me? I don't deserve this. There's no reason why this should have been the case. Why is this happening to me all the time? And in that mindset of being a victim and victimhood, you will keep asking that question until you get an answer, which you will find lots of answers. Either I wasn't born in the right side of the tracks, or I'm not the right color, or I didn't grow up with the right amount of money, or I wasn't part of the lucky sperm club, or whatever it might be, right? Or you can choose to see it the other way and say, all right, wait a minute, maybe this is an opportunity for me to grow. So going from that lack mindset to abundance mindset and say, you know what, if that's the case, if it is truly an opportunity for us to grow here, how do we do it? How do we do it? Who can we get around? You know, I look around your world. Maybe they're close. Maybe they're family members. Maybe they're friends. Maybe they're not. Maybe somebody you got to pay to go talk to. There's a lot of opportunities, but you got to actually want to do it. So often our mind wants to get stuck in the fact that we think we know everything, right? And we know enough that we don't need any more information. This is just what I got stuck in. At a certain point in my life, I thought, you know what? I don't really need to learn more because I got this thing pretty figured out. I'm pretty good. And really what that was, Scott, it was me being scared of all the stuff I didn't know, because the more I learned, the more books I read, seminars I went to, events I went to, put on, all that, the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't know jack shit, right? And that's scary. That's really scary when you think, well, I got this all figured out. I don't have to learn anymore. I can shut my brain off. You know, I'm 30. They say often, you know, that men die at 30 and then they're buried at 80. Because that's often what happens, right? They'd like, hey, I figured it out by 30, got everything figured out. I start a family, good to go. I'm just going to put on fucking coast. I'm going to go buy a six-pack and sit in my lazy boy and watch the race. Like, that's just what's going to be. I already got everything. I got a job that I got another 30 years and I can be out of. I can retire. I can, like, all that stuff. And when they realize that, wait a minute here. Hold on. Truly, when you become alive is when you're constantly learning new stuff and you're able to not just learn it for yourself, but share it with other people. That's what this whole podcast is about. It's about, you know what? I've learned stuff. Scott's learned stuff. We get the opportunity to share it with thousands of people a week. That's the coolest part about this. And nothing lights up more joy and fulfillment in my life. And I was going to speak for Scott, but I'm sure he's got a similar answer. Nothing lights up joy and fulfillment in your life more than knowing that you can share what you've learned. So maybe one person listening out there says, I never thought of it that way. Maybe that could work for me.
You're greatest.
Then they write us in a year later like, man, I heard that episode. I decided to try something new. I use the word yet now when I become a victim. And then all of a sudden, holy moly, I started asking better questions. And I started getting better answers. And now the stuff that used to hold me back isn't holding me back anymore. And that's what this is all about. So that difference between the lack and abundance, it's simply your perspective. That's why the name of this episode is mindset. How do you shift your mindset from surviving to thriving? Because it is all between the 6 inches of real estate between your ears and the 12 inches of real estate between your brain and your heart. Once you shift those, get into your heart and focus on the fact that God always wanted you to be full of abundance. That's what he is. And that you got to be really careful about how you define success. I'd love to jump into that with you, Scott. When it comes to success, everybody has so many different definitions. Most don't even think about them. Some see it on TV and they say, oh, well, success is that $1 million mansion right outside of Miami Beach and a big yacht sitting out there. Another one, it's a big ski chalet up in the mountains in Austria. And if I had that, I would be successful and happy. And this is how we actually break it up and say, well, when I have that, then I'll be happy. But what about between now and then? And we know happiness is only a fleeting thing. So how can we experience more joy and fulfillment in the moment so that when we eventually get to that goal, we can truly appreciate it? So Scott, what are your thoughts
Well, I
on
think
that?
first and foremost, what's radiating is happiness is an emotion. It's fleeting. We get it and it's gone. It releases its chemicals and it's gone. So aiming at happiness, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode too, but aiming at happiness is the wrong place. Fulfillment, that's a tangible achievement. Fulfillment is an actionable item. We can be fulfilled. We can have fulfillment. So aiming for that is different. And I'd like to back up a little bit in the conversation about learning. And one of the biggest things I used to love saying is, if you're not learning anything at the table you're sitting at, go sit at a different table. And that's changed for me, really, just within the last 6 months, with more understanding, the ability to be able to help more people. And I look at that, if I'm not learning anything at the table I'm sitting at right now, I need to look in the mirror, because I'm not absorbing what's around me. I mean, I have a 3-year-old daughter. She is awesome. She's a 3-year-old. She is the biggest joy and biggest terror all at the same time in my life. And I absolutely love it. I have taught her 50% of what she knows. Or her mother and I should say, have taught her 50% of what she knows. She's learned the rest of it from whatever outside influences are out there. I learned something from that girl every single day. A 3-year-old that I helped bring into this world and have been raising since she was born teaches me something every day. If you're sitting at a table and you can't learn, you're not looking hard enough. You're not absorbing. You're not listening. So that segues into every single challenge that I've faced, every single roadblock or wall that I have hit is my fault. I'm the person. I am the roadblock. I am the wall every single time. And that takes a lot of humility to admit that. That was tough to get to that point to be able to actually say that. But I'm comfortable with it. I am my biggest, worst enemy. I am the easiest person I will ever lie to. And that's another one that, you're the only person you can never lie to. That is bullshit. I'm sitting here telling you today that is bullshit. You can lie to yourself very easily. And you can lie to yourself to the point that you believe that lie literally for the rest of your life if you get the neural pathways connected the right way. So it's a dangerous place to be.
That's right.
And I very actively try to be as honest, humble, and vulnerable as I can. I guarantee you there's certain stories in my vocab right now that are probably based on lies from 30 years ago that I don't even realize because of that process. I can't fix what happened back then. I can't change that stuff. If I can get to the bottom of that and realize that, that's great. I'm going to make those adjustments. But moving forward, where I am today and where I'm going in the future, I can make those changes by being honest, by not manufacturing stories, by not doing those things. And by telling you, I'm absolutely going to lie to you at some point in time, because if I tell you I'm going to tell you the truth every single time, that's the biggest lie I could ever tell you. The first time somebody says, I never lie, I'm like, let's dive in on this conversation a little bit more. You got to be curious. You never lie. That's interesting. Because it's not a reality for us. We're humans. It's our nature to sin. It's our nature to tell lies. We have to combat that and have the self-awareness to not do that. And kind of went on a side tangent here from the question, but I think we got a lot out there.
It's all good stuff, brother. It's all good stuff. But it is true. We're flawed humans, and our goal is to just become better each day. Just better than you were yesterday, and just keep growing and be better and be more honest. That's the number one piece of it all, with yourself and with other people. When it comes to, defining success, it's important that you know where your target's at, right? If you just say, well, if I had a lot of money, I would be successful, right? That's the survival mindset. If I just had a lot of money, I wouldn't have these problems. Well, problem is, when you have a lot of money, you're just going to have different problems. Yeah, you might have more choices. You're just going to have different problems. So if you don't face those problems now, solve those problems, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's a bad relationship, maybe it's a whatever that's going on in your life, or a fact that you don't feel like you're worth anything. If that's the case, if you don't solve those problems, money is a magnifier. It just magnifies more of what you are. And if you're an asshole with money, you're just a bigger asshole. If you're kind and you love to give, you'll be bigger in that. There are so many choices that happen at that moment, in that time when you go from the survival to thriving. But someone that is in survival mode that has a lot of money still acts that way, if that makes sense. Thriving is a mindset. It's a state of heart. It's a state of mind where, you know what? Maybe I'm not the most important person. Maybe it's sharing what God's given me as gifts with other people. And that's where that joy and fulfillment comes from. That's the only source I found, brother, in 45 years of life and working with a lot of people a lot older than myself as coaches and mentors. They keep coming back to the same thing, that until you use contribution, help, being a servant leader as your number one objective, you're always going to be chasing the next bump, if you will.
Amen. And my definition of success really ties into everything that we're talking about here. My definition of success is that fulfillment and what it takes to maintain that fulfillment and achieve a higher level of that fulfillment. And money is definitely a big part of my life. There's no sugarcoating that. I work for money. We all do. You know, we are all money driven because that's what our society has. And to a certain level, to live in a modern society, we need that. One thing I could say, though, is I have a ton of survival skills. I know how to live and thrive with nothing. I could go out in the middle of the woods, be dropped in the middle of nowhere, hopefully with somebody else, because I might go nuts if I'm by myself. But besides that little point of it, I could build shelter. I could get food. I could get water. And I would still be fulfilled. I'd probably arguably be more at peace and fulfilled in the middle of nature doing that than I am here. And that is success, that fulfillment. So money is a byproduct of the way I live. And yes, it's important. And it is something that I strive to get more of. I want more of it so I can do more good things. But getting more of that money is not to buy a Ferrari and put it in my garage. If I get to a point that that's a possibility, cool, we'll look at that. My drive for that is, how can I get more money to give more away? How can I get more money to give it to this cause that really needs help? How can I get more money to donate this furniture to this needy family? And that's actually something that we're doing this Friday night through my church. We're donating sofas to somebody who's new in recovery and just getting out on their feet in an apartment. We're helping out with that. That means more to me than anything else because I get fulfillment out of that. I know that I'm helping somebody else who really needs help. I've been helped when I really needed help, so it's my turn to return the favor now that I'm capable.
I love it. I love it. You're exactly right. So first of all, listeners, it's a matter of think for yourself. How do you define success? Is it a number in a bank account? Is it a feeling? What is it for you? Because until you realize what it is, and you can actually imagine, like you're out there with your rifle or pistol or whatever, and you're shooting at a target, and it's just one big white piece of paper. You're at 100 yards, and you're just shooting at one big white piece of paper. How do you know if you've ever hit it? How do you know you've actually hit the target besides hitting the paper? When you take a marker and you make a plus sign and a dot in the middle, now you've got a target. Now you can say, okay, that's what I'm going to deem successful when I shoot this rifle. If I'm going to hit that right in the middle, then I'm successful. If not, we need to adjust the scope. We need to adjust our direction, our trajectory in order to hit that. So it's about being clear on what success is for you and then defining a path to get there. And what I'm going to leave you guys with as we wrap up here is, if you want to get out of this lack mindset, one of the fastest ways out of that lack mindset is to flip it. We talked about lack versus abundance. What about lack versus actually being grateful? If you feel like, I don't have enough, someone else has more than me, I can't believe it, they got nicer trucks in their company, they've got nicer, it's easier for them to hire people, they've got nicer out, whatever. Like, you can come up with all kinds of crazy bullshit stories. But if you can stop for a moment and say, you know what? I am so grateful for everything I have. Everything. The problems, the good, the bad, everything in place, my team, my old rusty truck that barely starts. I'm just happy I got one, right? I got clients who are willing to pay me something. Until you know what your worth is, they're going to pay you what that is, right? But to actually have gratitude for what you have right now. Because when you have more stuff, if you can't be grateful for the basic stuff that you have, when you have more stuff, you still won't be grateful for that either. That's a mindset. Whether you have one thing or 1,001 things, it doesn't matter. You have 10,000 in that bank account or you have 110 million in that bank account. It gives you more choices. But if you can't be grateful for the 10,000, the 110 million, it's not going to matter because you still won't be grateful for that either. And you'll never be happy with that either because we know it's all fleeting.
Man, I love it. That is, it's so true. It's all fleeting. And our biggest superpower as human beings, I'll leave it with this. Our biggest superpower every single one of us has is we can control our thoughts. We can control the way we think, the way we act. It takes discipline. It takes work. For habits that aren't fully developed or maybe are newer habits, 28 days might be enough. For habits that are ingrained, it's months, 130, 150, 180 days to get past some of this stuff. Don't quit before the magic happens. Repeat that, and you're going to have the old one there. It's going to be underlined. Don't let that discourage you. Let that motivate you. and continue to focus on that new one. I promise you, as soon as you get to a point that you have that in your subconscious mind and those neural pathways connect, that is your superpower. You can change the way you think and the way you view the world. In product, you will also change the way you treat everybody around you.
Oh, yeah. Because that's a self-reflection, right? Projection is what they call it. If somebody's treating you like crap, it's because they feel like crap inside, right? If they're treating you really good, it's because they feel good inside. And sometimes you get stuck on people that are pleasers and that always want to please everybody, and it robs from their own soul. That was my story. We'll get into that today. That's a whole other episode in itself. But just be careful. Be mindful. To Scott's point, you get to write your own story. What's your story going to be like? Who do you want to be? Because you have that opportunity to pen that story, no matter what your past is. No one's judging you for that. You have that choice. So, Scott, how can people find you if they like what they're hearing here and want to see what else you got?
I am all over LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook now. I have not been on Facebook for many, many years, but I decided to start it back up in March. So look me up, Scott with 2 T's, Lesak, Lesak. Connect with me, follow me, send me a message. Be great to talk to you. You can also shoot me an email, scott@myinspireyou.com. Love to talk to you. Love to tell you more about my story. I mean, a 20-minute podcast doesn't do it justice. We could talk for days on this. So love to share my story with you. And in turn, I'd love to hear yours as well. Please reach out. Happy to talk.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for sharing everything this week. And listeners, if you want to shift your mindset from surviving to thriving, it's simply a matter of gratitude.
Yes, it is.
That's really all this we talked about in the last 20 minutes, and it boils down to one word. If you can find gratitude and be grateful for everything that's in your life right now, you will automatically shift into a thriving mentality, and you will start to see opportunities and doors open where there once only was walls. That's the beautiful part about it. It's about being grateful. And so thank you for listening here for this episode. Next week, Scott and I are going to unpack the top 3 strategies to building and keeping a team that cares. Not just a team that shows up and does the work, but one who actually shows up and acts like an owner and actually cares about your clients, your projects, and the overall growth of the company itself and the mission that the company holds. So guys, if that sounds exciting to you, we'll see you next week.